Okay, I will introduce you. But most of the people here actually know Frank. So Frank is a friend of our laboratory. He's from University of Copenhagen, where he's a natural resource economist. Actually working more on fishery in the beginning of his career, but now he has started to work on animals on land and forest also. But I think it's very interesting political and forest management related topic today. When you meet the forest experts in France or something, they said they don't need to talk about close to nature forestry before we have solved the issue about the browsing from game population. So it's very relevant how to manage that. So,
but I want to talk a lot about browsing. And I have chosen not only to use slides, because when people if everything is on slides, I usually fall asleep myself, so I don't want to do that. Is it okay? If you want to hear a joke about a Danish economist, would you hear a joke about the Danish?
Of course, yes, yeah.
For sure. That was a Danish economist that went down to New Guinea. And in New Guinea, there are some padlocks. Okay. And then he went into a butcher shop. And there was human brains for sale. Okay. And first there was economics from the United States. And then it was very, very cheap kilogram these brains. And then there was French brains, also economists. And they were even more cheap. And then there was Danish economics brains. And they were very, very expensive to kilogram. And that was nice. Okay. So the Danish economics, we call him Frank, for example. He was happy. So he went hands up into the butcher shop, and I can see Danish brains. Economists, they are much more expensive than other brains. And then they put you up that thing. If you know how many Danish economists it's required to get 1 kilogram of brain, then you better. So basically, that's what economics is about, isn't it? So that was an economic joke about a Danish economist. Okay. When I start, then suddenly I'll switch here, and then you have to look at the paper. But this is, so to say, a cost-benefit analysis of some management strategies for red deer in Denmark, and that's written together with a colleague, Thomas Lundhede, and then also Peter Sunde, who is, so to say, one of the leading biologists also in wolves and things like that. Okay, so the plan, first a brief introduction, then a little bit about a biological model, very little about these 6 and 8 classes, a little bit about the management strategies, then a lot about the annual net benefits. And in order to avoid any criticism from Jens, I will say very, very little about valuation, okay, because otherwise we start criticizing, and then I will say a lot about the results and a lot about the discussion. But if we start by presenting this in a broader perspective, then cost-benefit analysis, there are 2 ways or 2 things you can do a cost-benefit analysis on. A direct, so to say, intervention in a resource allocation, or you can do it of a regulatory instrument or something like that. That's common. And the first one, we are not interested in that. Here we take this with a regulatory instrument and depart from that, okay? Then when you, for example, impose a tax on CO2, then this tax, that leads to reaction by, for example, farmers, okay? Okay? And it is this reaction by the farmers that we want to do a cost-benefit analysis of. So there we, contrary to the first case, need an economic model. Okay, and that can be either a general or partial equilibrium model. All this is well understood. Okay? Okay. What has this to do with animal populations? Yeah, normally then you want to evaluate various management strategies of animal populations, okay? And these strategies, they're designed to affect either the population or the harvest, okay? Okay, and these strategies, they are restrictions on hunting, and to predict the effect on the population, then we need a model. So it's this idea behind this paper is basically the same as with a regulatory instrument. We need a biological model, so to say, to predict the effect of hunting strategies on the population. Very basically, okay? And then we can value this. So basically, it's the same idea, okay? And here we use a biological model. It's not optimal management strategies, but we use a biological model, and the outcome of the biological model, we value that, okay? So basically, it's the same idea, and that was the idea to the whole paper, okay? About the biological model, then it's often so that these hunting strategies, they are imposed on 6 and 8 classes of animal species. And these cost and benefit, they also depend on the 6 and 8 classes, the same with the values. You can talk about a meat value, a recreational value. They also depend on 6 and browsing and damage cost also depend on 6 and 8 classes. So what we do in this paper is to use a 6 and 8 structured biological model to evaluate the effect of various hunting strategies on the population. What is new here is that within a 6 and 8 class biological model, then there is in fact 2 issues. The first issue, that is the common one, that the harvest strategy, that affects the size of the harvest and population. That's straightforward. But in a 6 and 8 structured model, then there is also a composition effect, okay? Because the net benefits or also depend on how the population is, so to say, distributed on various 6 and 8 classes, okay? Okay, so the distribution of the population also matters now. And that's something new, that's something we normally don't do. The first one, that's a traditional open access effect, okay? Over harvest, okay, or too little harvest, okay? That's the size of the harvest. But when you're in and 6 and 8 structured models, then it also matters how the population is distributed on the various 6 and 8 classes. And in fact, this has not been done before, and that's what we do. Okay, so we, in fact, make a cost-benefit analysis of B, and then we fix or scale A to the same size on other values. Okay, and that's basically what we do. Okay, and then we use red deer in Denmark as an example. Okay, and there are recently imposed some separate restriction on hunting on various 6 and 8 classes, mainly mature stocks. Okay, cost and benefits also differ. Okay, what is also important is that in economists, normally, yeah, do you have a question? No, but just interrupt if there's anything. I don't want to stand up here just talking. Okay, is that okay? Okay, that was in fact the whole purpose of telling the joke. Okay, so just interrupt if there's anything. Okay, okay. Then we have to distinguish between what we can economic optimal and non-optimal strategies. Okay, and economic optimal strategies, there we go for the optimal harvest or the optimal population or the optimal composition of the population. Okay, and that's perfectly. But within a cost-benefit framework, it is much more common to do it of non-optimal strategies. Okay, and that is in fact what we do. Okay, and there is only, I have only figured out that there was one paper by Milner and Goulon, that's France, I cannot speak France. I don't know whether it's correct, okay? He do it of non-optimal strategy, but they only consider the meat value. So all this that leads to the purpose of this, to conduct a CBA of various harvest strategies for red deer in Denmark. We use a 6 and 8 structure biological models. We include a broad set of benefits and costs, that's meat values, recreational values, browsing damage cost, and traffic damage cost. And then we operate with 4 or alternatively 5 because we have 2 different strategies for a natural population composition of the deer population. Okay, so there are 2 similar strategies. So other 4 or 5. Okay, and it's non-optimal harvest strategies. And then it's important that it's a CBA of the composition of the harvest and population on various sex classes, and not the size of the harvest and population. Yes.
But you're not just transferring for forestry age class model with different species.
Yeah, you can say that. Yeah.
But that's different.
But it's a bit different.
You should have an interaction between males and females. Otherwise,
Yeah. So,
a little bit different.
there's some attacks here.
But here it's a bit different. Between if you do that, it's normally timber value that matters. Okay, and here it is a broad set of benefits and costs. So in that sense, it's different. But the basic idea is the same. Okay. When you in a more advanced. So in that sense, I'm transferring. In another sense, I'm not. Okay. Also because here there's a relation between the harvest and the population. Okay. Was that answer now?
Yeah.
But you are the forest economic expert. I'll not interfere with that.
And the Danish.
Okay. Shall we go on? Is that okay? Other questions? Do you understand what I want to do? Okay. Do you also understand that?
Yeah.
Okay. Then we switch to Danish. Okay. Good. Yeah. A little bit about the biological model. That will be very brief because I want to go. I cannot see any watch in here.
Don't worry, just
No, we use an S8 and S-structured models where we follow females and males of red deer over time. Okay, and there are 3 inputs in this biological model, and we don't have to dig into details about that because we are economists, Danish economists with a large brain, maybe. Okay, but we have 8 specific frequency rates for females. There's someone raising hand.
Oh, they want to accept.
No, it's actually just people entering the room. So
you do that. Okay. And we follow females and males over time. Okay. So concerning A, okay, there we need to determine the number of 1-year-old calves, as they are called, that we put it to the population. Okay, and here we use the amount of calves that are born by females at the start of the hunting season. And if a female is 2 years old, then it's 0.57, and if they are more than 2 years old, then they are 0.82. I have a daughter that she's 20 years old and she has not born a baby yet. Maybe I should talk with her. She only needs to be 3 years old, maybe. That can be a bit problematic, I would say. It's good you only have boys, Jens, that we don't have the same problem. Okay. Okay, then there is the thing that a male of red deer give birth not only to 1 calf, okay, then for every adult male there can be 20 females. Okay, so they are not married as we are. Okay, so to say. So
and social concept of marriage.
Yeah, I remember I talked about this at an IFRO seminar where you participated.
Yes.
Where you asked about that.
Yes.
Okay. Isn't that
usually the population when you plan, you are considering.
then you match females and males, but that's not necessary.
Exactly, but when I read the paper, like you put that as a minimum.
Yeah, but it's a minimum. in the sense that it's a restriction.
Yeah.
It's a restriction in the sense that it's a requirement for the amount of males.
It still exists.
Yeah,
That's
but
the-
basically this means that that the number of cows recruited does not depend on the number of males. Okay, basically. So that's easy. Okay, then we also need the distribution of cows between males and females, and then we assume they're half. Okay, okay. There's a little bit more females than male spawn. I think it's 0.52 and females and 0.48 males or something like that. Okay.
But in your model, you assume 50-50% in the
Because it's close to the reality.
yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also what we assume. We are not using the actual numbers. We assume they are equal. Because the empirical evidence is that there's a little bit more females than males. A little bit. Yeah, but that's the Danish data, at least, saying that. Okay. But we assume they're half. Okay.
Assume you're modeling individuals instead of the biomass.
I follow individuals.
Yes.
Yeah. But I'd still at the aggregated level.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you have a number
Yeah.
that's not even.
No, but we follow 1,000 individuals. We scale it, the beginning population to 1,000 individuals. And then but that comes now. Is that okay? Yeah, okay. Because we want to calculate the population of males and females in each age class. Okay? Okay. And then for each age class, we have a total mortality rate that is calculated by all age-specific mortality rates. Okay? So each age class has a mortality rate, and then the number of males and females in a given category, that's all these mortality rates multiplied together, and then 1 minus this, because that's the survival rate. Okay, okay. And then we take the population that's 1 year younger, it becomes the population in the next year, and then we multiply with the survival rate, and then we have the population. Okay, that's great, yeah.
I just wanted to clarify things. Like you're taking the mortality as some natural based mortality.
No, that comes in a moment. Because we assume that all mortality is hunting mortality. There's no predation, there's no natural mortality. But that's the next thing.
Okay.
Your own,
Then I ask question of if you
yeah, you need to no, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. And all mortality is due to hunting. Okay. But we have a baseline on 2% due to traffic accident. And the only reason we have that is we have traffic damage cost payment at the moment. Okay.
Is car traffic
What?
accident? Car traffic accident.
Yeah.
Say 2%.
Yeah. 2% of the population.
Is what you observe.
Yeah, that's what we observe.
But this is a probability, if I'm correct. Probability that each individual.
No.
No,
The damage cost is the probability times the damage cost. But the mortality here is 2% of the population. Okay, so there is a difference. Okay, yeah, okay, good. So all mortality in this model is due to hunting. Okay, okay. And that the reason is that makes the biological model a lot simpler, because then we are not, and that's this Sunde and Hågaard, they are biological. That's how they have done the model. We are basically just using their model. Okay, is that okay?
Yeah.
I don't know a lot about the biological model. Okay. Okay. About the different management strategies. Yeah, they are different combination of the sex and age specific hunting mortality rates, and that comes in a moment. Okay. So under each management strategy, there will be a different composition of the population due to these different age. And I make a brief overview over this in a moment. And under each management strategy, then the total population is in a steady state equilibrium. Okay. Okay, so the total number of individuals that dies is equal to the total number of individuals that is recruited. Okay, and it also implies that the sex and age distribution of the population of 8 years is constant over time. And then what is important is that we fix a target on the total population on 1,000 individuals before recruitment. That's what I said before. Okay, and that's why it's the composition and not the size we do a cost-benefit analysis of. Okay, so basically we just follow 1,000 individuals. Okay, over time. They regroup, they things like that, they may depend, okay, but it's the composition of the population we are in. Is that okay? I'm not a biological expert, but I hope I have explained it. Could you understand this pretty okay though? Okay, and then we need the paper. This first page on the paper, that's the value 6 and 8 class. Okay, okay, and there's good arguments, we don't get that. We distinguish between females counts, that's females that's in the first year of life, females yearlings, that's the second female, and then adult females, that's over 3 years old. Okay. This, okay, for calves, for males, there are calves and yearlings, and then there is young stocks, which is between 3 and 5 years, then near mature stocks, they're between 6 and 8 years, and then mature stocks, they're between 9 years and old. Okay, and this is a perfectly common way, okay, to distinguish between that. And the reason why we need this is because in the biological model, there's 30 years, okay? So the valuation task would be tremendous if we are going to put a value on all 30 years, okay? But then it's structured model. So that's why we classify.
Regarding to that, I have a question: that why didn't put some kind of management of objective age? Because this is usually what it's doing.
I didn't hear them.
Objective age in the population. Usually for the deal it's between 12 and 14 years old. So you put in the paper you put 24 years as a maximum year. So some just question that.
Am I using 24 years?
Yeah, 24.
Where am I using that?
In the model.
No, I think it's the
First equation. It's
no, but it's 24 age classes we have.
8 classes or years?
8 classes. In the biological model,
Yes.
they follow here until from the 0-year-old to 24-year-old. And that's why instead, and if we had 24 years, then we should value each year. That means that for each value, we need 24 sub-values. We need to reduce that to 7. Okay? So that's...
Yeah, I understand what you did, but...
Yeah, but that's perfectly common to reduce it. But they follow each year, okay, in 24 years, okay? Okay.
But why 24? This is my question. Why not
because that's the maximum normally.
Yeah, biologically, yes, but in the field you are not going to find more than 14, 15 max.
No,
okay, but
Denmark, I believe he knows what he's doing.
Okay,
that's
not your part.
No, but I say since he has 24 years, then because there is experience at the DFM.
It's theoretical biological age that.
But in the biological model, there's 24 year classes, okay, and 2 separate. Yeah.
And that makes me think that you don't consider natural mortality.
Yeah.
You don't do not.
We do not at all. No.
So it's not about.
No.
So it's not important. Like if you.
That means that you can live forever, sir. So you should be happy about that. No, there's no natural mortality. Okay, and basically that's problematic.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what's the next thing. That's the next thing we have talked about working on, in fact, yesterday also together with you, Jens, that in these models, there can be a predator, for example, wolves and
I think that mortality will be much easier to model than having a trophic level.
Yeah.
No, but the thing is that then it becomes a bit messy in a sex and age structure models if you have two different kind of mortalities that vary.
Yeah, but I have to choose. So I think that your colleague would agree that for modeling natural mortality, you probably have a constant proportion that dies out every year. But for predation, they'll change. That you won't. It's not just a matter of like economically out of control, but it's that going from a predator, like a single species or an age-structured model where you have a stable equilibrium, to a predator-prey model where you have like an oscillating. And that's a big jump.
Yeah, but that's also what I'm saying.
Yeah. So
that's higher. It's hunting mortality and only hunting mortality.
Yeah. Maybe all stacks are not hunting. Also.
Yeah. All what?
All very old stacks are not.
Very old stacks. In Denmark, very old stacks. No, but in Denmark, very old stacks. That's trophy hunting. That's highly important. The older okay. Okay. So in fact, those who have that, highest hunting value here is near mature stacks and mature stacks. Okay, that's trophy hunting.
Trophy.
Okay. So that's what we target. I'm 60 years old, so maybe I'm a danger zone. I'm a near mature staff, maybe. Or what? Is it okay to continue? Okay, next piece of paper. Is it okay with this paper? Okay, then we have the various management strategies, and we do that very fast. Okay, first we have free harvest. I would say about. Okay, that is unrestricted harvest in the hunting season. I will say a little bit more about trophy hunting. That's what you asked about. Okay, as many mature males as possible, and we have harvest as many individuals as possible. Let low stack strategy one, but it is not. And then we have two strategies for a natural demographic population composition. One with identical hunting mortality rate for mature stocks, and one with differentiated. Okay, and let's get a very fast overview over these. Okay, and see how the hunting mortality rates are. Free harvest. Okay, there you simply allow totally free harvest. Okay, and there in the biological model there are some assumptions about the sex and age specific hunting mortality rate. They look like this. Okay, and that's the share harvest. Okay, and if we have these hunting mortality rates, then we can calculate the population in each age class. Okay, and then aggregate. Okay, and there 1% of all males will survive until they become mature stocks. Okay, then there's trophy hunting. Okay, and there we want as many old males as possible, as many mature stocks as possible. Okay, and that is to allow as many males to survive until they become mature stocks. Okay, and if we look at the hunting mortality rates, then it's 0 for male yearlings, young stocks, and near mature stocks. Okay, because we only want mature stocks. Okay, and that's trophy hunting in Denmark. Okay, that's the other strategy. Then we have maximum harvest, and then we want to harvest as many individuals as possible. Individuals, they are born by females, so basically we should have as many females as possible to maximize the recruitment of calves. Okay, and we see that because 10% of female yearlings and adult females, that's the harvest survival rates there. And then they look like this. Okay, and this natural geographical population, okay? Natural demographic population composition, then the mortality is high in the first year, then it's low between 1 to 8 and 10 years, and then it's increasing from 10 years and afterwards. Okay, and we have two strategies because it's not clear whether the hunters in the field can see the age of stocks. Okay, so basically we have one with identical hunting mortality rates and one with differential, and that's 4A and 4B. Okay, and it looks like this. Okay, with identical hunting mortality rate for stocks, then it's 27%, and then the hunting mortality rates in 4B is 40% for mature stocks. Okay, and then otherwise. So that depends on whether the hunter in the field can distinguish mature stocks from other stocks, basically. That's why it's different here. Is that okay? Did you understand this?
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to know what clock it is.
What time? It's 38.
38?
Yeah, but you started later.
But you just won when you need. Okay. Cool. Then we do a little bit about the annual net benefits. Okay, so now we turn to the economic part of the model. Okay, and the net benefit, that's the meat value or the hunting value, the recreational value, then we have browsing and traffic damage cost. Okay, and we, for each 6 and 8 class, then we identify these values and costs. And then the total net benefits, that's the sum of all values and costs for all 8 classes. Okay? Okay. That's basically how it is. So it's the net benefit. 3 things. Yes? No.
Yeah, okay, I see, but I just
No, but that is a lot.
consider that it is the damage cost or something like that.
There is a lot of other benefits and costs we potentially could consider. Okay, but in the hunting literature, these are mentioned as the most important. Okay. 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 So, but there is a lot of benefits and costs we potentially could include. Okay. Okay. But we believe that hunting value, recreational value, and browsing damage and traffic damage, that's the most important. Okay. But whether it's true, we don't know. But that's what normally is considered when you talk about hunting. That's okay. Is that okay?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
No, but I thought that maybe damage costs are or maybe it's not the browsing cost that you think about. What? The browsing that they eat the small trees. You have the browsing inside that.
Yeah, there's browsing cost. Okay.
I think it's more they're just you're asking more about indirect benefits.
Yeah.
Rather than like if I what's the benefit of me running in the forest and I see a deer?
Yeah.
It's one of these indirect benefits that don't come.
No,
Yeah.
thinking about
I mean, the recreational value, I would say.
Yeah.
Partly, but not totally. But there is a lot of other benefits and costs arising both from a forest and so in principle there's no limits on the amount of benefits and costs we could include. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. About the specification, okay, we choose a very simple one. Okay. The recreational value and the meat value, that only depends on the harvest, and of course that can be criticized. Okay, but that's to be able to parameterize that. The browsing and traffic damage cost, that's the population. And then we have constant marginal values and cost. Okay, not increasing, we have constant marginal values and cost. That's also to be able to parameter. So I'll discuss that at the end. Okay.
So there's
Because-
no, I mean, I know because you're not calculating the optimal, you don't have to worry about necessarily having convex or concave.
No, but the thing is that it would affect the result because strategies with extreme population and harvest, they get a higher weight compared to when you have increasing cost, marginal cost, and or decreasing marginal benefits. Okay, so extreme strategies is favored here. Okay, and that's the implication of that. Okay, and that's.
Oh, I have no problem with doing this.
No, but I'm making that restrictive assumption. Okay, but basically we do it because we only have one observation to calculate the cost parameter. Yeah. So when we only have that, then it's a bit problematic. Okay, is that okay? Yeah. Okay, good. And then the recreational value is, or the browsing value, that's direct for the meat value or the hunting value. It's the price on meat times the weight. Okay, and for the traffic damage cost, that was what you talked about. It's the probability of one red deer being involved in a traffic accident times the traffic damage cost, and that's what you talked about.
Yes, but I have one question. Maybe you'll speak later about it. How the benefits regarding to recreational benefits from the hunting, especially trophy value, because it's added, how it's distributed over the classes? Because
It's distributed based on the weight of red deer.
yes, but does it linear or not? Because
It's non-linear because it depends on the weight within each year class. Okay.
I think a better way of thinking of it is just a different price for each fleet.
Yeah.
yeah, because of the size of the class,
Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah. So but that comes on the next slide.
What happened? Like what I find it in the paper that the benefits from trophy it's low
The benefit of
hunting, of trophy hunting, for example, for the major stags.
but that's the results you're talking about.
No, I'm speaking about the benefits.
Yeah, but that's under the results. And traffic hunting gave a very low or a large negative net benefit.
It's also in terms of total net benefit.
No, and let's begin.
I don't think that hunters go out and target red deer in order to get a trophy.
What happens there?
No, but let me answer one thing. Okay, so basically this trophy hunting strategy, you would shoot it even though it's not a trophy.
Okay.
But you get a higher value of hunting a mature start. Okay, basically. Okay, and that's also in these numbers here. Okay. But may I finish this?
Yes.
Before we take the value in a moment, okay? Okay, that was the specification. Decision rules, okay? If you only have one strategy, then we shall do this if the net benefit is positive. But what if the net benefit is negative? Okay, but zero population and zero harvest that give a net benefit on zero. So one implication of this is that as soon as the net benefit is negative, then we shall simply kill all red deer. Okay? So, and that's one implication. And when we have two strategies, then it's the same. Okay? If both two strategies give a negative net benefit, then we shall drive it to extension. Okay? Okay, since we have a steady state, the harvest and population of red deer is constant over time, so the net benefit is also constant. We are only interested in ranking these strategies, okay? We are not interested in the size of the net benefit. So it's enough to look at the annual net benefit now, okay? We only need the net benefit for 1 year, okay? Because the population, okay, the harvest, and the net benefit is constant, okay? So discounting, that's simply just scaling up and down, okay? Basically. Is that okay? Good. Next table. Yeah. That's about valuation. Okay. And I'll say a little bit about the start of the table. But if you look at where it starts to the left, values and cost, there you see the values and the cost for each year class. Okay? Okay? Okay. And how are they found? Yeah, if you look at the valuation method, and I will not talk about that, then for the price, that it's a price on an illegal market. Okay? The weight of red deer, that's based directly on data. For the marginal recreational value, marginal browsing damage cost, and traffic damage cost, then we use benefit transfer. What did you ask, man?
No,
Just as a conversion.
exchange rate.
What?
Exchange rate.
Exchange rate?
With euro.
No. Well, in 20 years, you are going to use Danish crowns in France, so you have to get used to the currency rate. Is that okay? Okay. But there we simply do some kind of benefit transfer. Okay. And for the probability, it is a traffic damage cost. Okay. Okay. Any questions about that? No.
That's what I'm asking, like exactly. Seems a little bit low, the marginal value or recreational value for the matrix tags.
Yeah, but the marginal recreational value, why is it lower?
Because it's something around 800 euros. And the deal, matrix tag deals in 8 to 10 years could be like 10,000 euros and more. Anyway, the current stuff. Maybe you don't have it like.
But you need to think about we are following year classes.
Exactly what I'm saying. Like it's not a problem. Like if you have.
But it's for one individual.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah.
I think it should be higher. This is what because it later in the results.
The recreational value of killing one mature stocks is it's almost 1,000 euros. I think that's okay.
But
it's only the recreational value, not the meat value.
Yeah, but
for one individual and one person.
Yeah, but one individual could go up to 10,000+ euros.
I think it's just the price in Denmark.
Probably it's price in Denmark.
That's
because it's added property value is also.
Okay, good.
Anyway.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah. Two general remarks. Okay. It's annual values. We measure all for the same year as we do in a cost benefit analysis, 2022. And then normally it's recommended to do it in consumer prices. We do it in producer prices. Okay. Okay. So all are converted by a value adding tax. And then these numbers are benchmark values. Okay. Okay. And we admit that many are highly uncertain. So what we do is we do a sensitivity analysis. And instead of varying each age class in each, we keep the ranking among the sex and age classes. So when we talk about varying the marginal recreational value, then we value all sex and age classes simultaneously. Okay? Okay. Basically. It's highly uncertain, so they get a very big kick, 50%. Okay? And that's because, and a decrease in the value of cost, that's a lower bound, and increase that's an upper bound. And that was enough about values. And then I avoid questions from you. Okay? Good. To the results. Okay? I'll repeat 3 assumptions first, and then we look at the result. It's a steady state equilibrium. So the population harvest and net benefit is constant over time. The population is scaled to 100 individuals. 1,000 individuals is the composition of the population. And then the meat and recreational value, that depends on the harvest. The browsing and the damage cost, that depends on the population. Okay? Is that okay? And then we talk about the results from the biological model. That's here. Okay. And I have marked what you shall look at with board. Okay. And we start with strategy 3, maximum harvest. Okay. And then for strategy C, we see that the harvest of female calves, of male calves and male yearlings is higher than the other strategies. Okay. Okay. Harvest. Why is that important? That becomes important in a little while. So that was characterized the biological model for maximum harvest. Then we look at free harvest. Okay, and with bold we have marked that the population of near mature stocks and mature stocks is much lower than under the other strategies. And that's simply because we allow free to harvest. Then we look at trophy hunting. Okay, and the population of near mature stocks and mature stocks is much higher than on the other strategies. Okay. On the other hand, when we look at the harvest and this trophy hunting, then mature stocks, there the harvest is a lot higher, but for all other categories, then the harvest is low. Okay. And that's simply just because we look for males. Okay. Very mature old males. When it comes to this difference between 4A and 4B, 4A, that was identical hunting mortality rate. 4B, that was, so to say, differentiated hunting. Then if we look at the harvest first, then with the identical mortality rate, then red deer is harvest younger than with differentiated. So they harvest younger under 4A compared to 4B. Okay. And then at the population, okay, we also see that the population of young stars, near mature stars and mature stars, they are lower under 4A compared to 4B. And the funny thing is, this explains our economic results, which we go to now. Okay, next page. Okay. And that looks a bit complicated. The total annual net benefit is at the bottom. And we start with strategy 3A. Okay, there we have the total annual net benefit. That's positive and highest. Okay. So maximum harvest is what we should go for. Okay. Okay. How come that be? Yeah. If we look at the meat value and the recreational value, and that's up there and up there, they are highest under the strategy. Why? Yeah, if we look at female calves, that yields a higher meat value and a higher recreational value. The same does male calves and male yearlings. And that was where the harvest was highest. So the biological model, that explains this result. Okay. And the result is basically we harvest a lot of female calves, a lot of male calves, and a lot of male yearlings, and that yields a high total meat value and a high total recreational value. So the biological model simply gives us the result. Okay. Turning to strategy 1, free harvest. I have also marked that with bold. Okay. And there we see that the total traffic damage cost and the total browsing damage cost, that is lower than under the other strategy. Total annual net benefit, okay, that's a small but still positive number. Okay. Okay, and if we look at it, then we see that the damage cost of near mature stocks and mature stocks is lower than under the other strategy. But the population was also lower. So that's also explained by the biological model. And so it is with all our results. Then we talked about trophy hunting. Okay, there the harvest of all other categories than mature stocks was lower. And that turns up in the total meat value and the recreational value. Okay, because that's lower. Okay. On the other hand, the population of near mature stocks and mature stocks was higher, so that turns up in this also. Okay, so there, the browsing and traffic damage cost. And traffic accounting, that's a huge negative net benefit. Okay? Okay, so if that was the only strategy, then we should kill all red there. Okay. And then when comparing 4A and 4B, it is exactly the same result. Under 4A, we have, under both 4A and 4B, we have a negative total annual net benefit. Okay. Okay, it's smaller for 4A than 4B. And we had that red deer was harvested in a younger age. Okay, that gives a higher total meat value and recreational value. On the other hand, we had that the population of young stocks, near mature stocks and mature stock was lower. That gives a lower, so to say, total browsing and total traffic damage costs. So that generates an 18 result. So the biological model basically explains the results. Okay.
It's a little bit pricey, but
What?
a little bit pricey, but
A little bit.
prices or the cost that you're associated.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's exactly what you said.
No, but from the results of the biological model, we get all results from the economic model, basically. Okay. Then we have made some sensitivity analysis. Okay. Okay. And they are on the last page. Okay. Okay. And the ranking of these strategies does not change for parameter variation. Okay. So the ranking is still the same. Okay. We still prefer strategy 3 over strategy 1 and then all the rest. Okay. And when then we take the lower bound of the marginal recreational value and we take the upper bound for the marginal browsing damage cost and marginal traffic damage cost, then all net benefits are negative. Okay? Okay? So basically, for this parameter variation, then we shall extend all red. Okay? Strategy 3, okay, that's the same. Okay? Only for the lower bound of the recreational value, the upper bound for the browsing damage cost and traffic damage cost, then it's negative. It's positive still for the lower bound of the marginal meat value. Okay. Strategy 1, there are all parameter variations in the wrong direction make it negative. Okay. Good. Okay. Strategy 2, that's always negative. So traffic accounting, irrespective of parameter variation, does not make sense. And then for 4A and 4B, we get approximately the same result. But the basic conclusion is that these parameter variations, they have a huge effect on the results. So it's not particularly robust. Okay? Okay?
But it's rather robust that the trophy
Hunting is negative, yes. Yeah. But the funny thing is, and that's something to think about, okay? Okay? It's maximum harvest. Or not maximum harvest, but it's strategy 3. Okay. Okay. That's a bit surprising, isn't it? The thing is, there's a similar result over in fisheries economics, okay? Because it's true that open access in fisheries is a disaster if you look at the size of the harvest. But when you look at the composition of the harvest on 6 and 8 classes in a fisheries economics model, then open access is the best. Okay? Okay?
Only compared to statics, though.
Yeah, only in a static model.
Like I have a feeling that if you have a dynamic control.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But in a simple static model, it is so.
Okay.
And there we have a similar result. Okay.
Yeah.
And the basic thing is fisheries economics is on the open harvest, on the open access. Okay. There's no distortion of the harvest between 6 and 8 classes. Okay. Yeah, so we have the same result there. Okay, I'm not writing about that, but that's an analogy. And then the discussion, okay? We assume the steady state, okay? We could have used a dynamic model and allow adjustment path towards steady state. And now the net benefit is not constant over time. In a 6 and 8 structured model, that's probably impossible, okay? But a bit tricky, at least. Yeah, maybe it does not generate reasonably a just dynamic adjustment path, but that's something to discuss. But we do it as a simplification. Okay. Okay. And then it's highly uncertain marginal values and costs. Okay. And we have used very simple valuation methods. Okay. To minimize this uncertainty, we do benefit transfer for other red deer population in Denmark. Okay. Okay. But yes. Should we do primary evaluation study? Okay, okay. Maybe it's outside the scope. Maybe it is not. But this uncertainty, we handle it by sensitivity analysis. Whether that is enough or not enough. Then there is a discussion between optimal and non-optimal strategies. We do non-optimal management strategies. Okay, we accept an efficiency loss. Okay, should we target an economic optimal population? From an economic point of view, yes, but from a practical point of view, policy point of view, probably not, because it's unrealistic. But the most important thing, and what I feel is not good, that is this with the constant marginal benefits and cost. Okay? Because that emphasizes strategies with extreme values of population complexity. Okay? Okay. And it's probably why maximum harvest strategy yields a high positive net benefit, trophy hunting a high negative. If we have positive and increasing marginal damage cost, positive but decreasing values, okay, then we would probably tend to favor natural demographic population composition because they are not extreme strategies. We have no other possibilities that are assuming, okay, but I think that's something to work on in the future, make the cost assumption more reasonable. Okay, that was all from me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Did it work with this piece of paper instead of all things on the slides? Yeah, was that okay? Yeah, that was an experiment.
Yeah.
You were exposed to a natural experiment here. Without knowing
just one clarification, because this is a free harvest. How was that defined? I don't know, because if we think about free harvest is where effort, the marginal.
That's an old Danish management strategy, free harvest within a given time period, within a hunting season.
Yeah, but why do you not?
Because then you don't care about whether you harvest males or females. Yeah, because this maximum harvest strategy, that was to let as many females survive so they can born calves, okay?
Yeah.
So under free harvest, you don't care about what you shoot, basically.
But you still put a limit on how much it's.
Yeah.
So it's compromised. Okay.
Yeah.
It's free. What you should.
No, but
You control the
you put constraint, but you are not successful in all hunting. If you take 10 huntings, you cannot use. So there is still some hunting mortality under what can be called free harvest. Okay, you are not successful every time you go out and hunt. Okay.
But I have a question regarding to the size of population. You put it like stable population doesn't just take as it is all this thing. And what will happen if you start to play a little bit with size of population?
Yeah, but that's a totally new topic.
Exactly. But
yeah, because this is a cost-benefit analysis of the composition, and that was the purpose of doing it. Okay, and then we disregard the size of the population. But there is a lot of papers on the size of the population already, but no on the composition.
Yeah, but it's a ratio too. It would be really nice to make some sense.
Yeah. That's obvious.
This is the problem that could make
That-
some parameters totally go in different direction.
Yeah. But
Cost-
that's true.
cost-
That's true. Yeah,
Much
that's
higher
true.
regarding to the population.
But normally, economists, we do things in a comparative way, only looking at one effect at a time. Okay, so instead of starting with 100 effects, we focus on one effect and then basically disregard all others. That's common economic methodology to do it in that way. And we only focus on the composition here because I have found no example where they focus on this composition in that sense. Okay, maybe there is when forest economics, I don't know, but within at least the hunting literature, then it's mainly the size effect, not the composition.
From the ecological or biological point of the composition, it's more like structure, population structure.
Yeah, but that's the
Maybe
same.
population structure. But it just in terms that how the people in the ecology.
Our biologists talk about the composition of the population.
Island structure, maybe I was totally out.
I think a way that might make more sense to you is that rather than, and I don't, this shouldn't change anything, but rather than modeling like 1,000 individuals, you would model the proportion of the number of individuals in each class. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
That's another way of doing it that might be, but it should be the same thing, but it might be easier to
Yeah, this could be some other thing. Yeah, it's
another way to do it. Theory shouldn't change anything.
No, I think that would give the same result. But you,
Then I know, but that's my point, is because he only really cares about the proportion of the number of individuals in each class, not the number itself. It's more of the ratios. And if you model, instead of saying, okay, I have 1,000 individuals and I keep track of that, keep that number constant. If you just said, okay, I'm just going to say I'm modeling a total proportion from 0 to 1 of all of the different classes, and each one of those is just
that's basically.
yeah. It'll do the same thing, but it'll really force it into this world of we only really care about the relative proportions of the population in each of these different. How many individuals? Yeah, exactly.
Technical perspective.
That was my dog. Probably tell me that I'm soon dying.
You're going to be grandfather.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. But basically, David, that's what we do. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, but then we vary the proportion between the various strategies. So basically, that's what we do because this with the steady state that translates down to 6 and Jens, you had a question.
But I think you talked about it would be a lot of evaluation study to parameterize.
Of course.
So what's the product?
What's the clock now?
To estimate this comes from Dennis called.
Because you can like the ongoing discussion with it's an hour.
No, but that's now they started a bilateral discussion. I take the microphone and shout at you because you are discussing internally.
No, I'm just saying that this is something that it's applied. Like so we have exactly the same what you are saying, and I have the tables of population for my hunting ground, saying exactly what you just like.
But do you have something that can predict the outcome on various harvest strategies? Do you have a model that can predict that outcome?
Why did you just plan?
Because you need, if you want to do this, then you need harvest strategies.
Yeah, but the thing is that people from the field, they apply one strategy. They wanted to keep the structure stable. They don't want to play with how you play. This is more like the
No, but you shall use it for policy purpose. It's not a description of how it is, okay? I think basically what we shall use it for is policy analysis.
Yeah, but this is another coming to the point of view of technical application or field application, because game managers or hunting managers, they wanted to follow the natural distribution like you are using in for strategy. They don't want to play too much with the different age.
But
Because it's ecologically,
what is then the purpose of valuing it? What is then the purpose of valuing it if they know what to do?
just show that it's possible to do it other ways.
Yeah. Nah.
It exists solid
But
system.
Depends who you ask.
No, this is exactly.
Low populations,
Really
like
strictly.
high population.
No, it's not fit. I think this is something you
I mean,
politically and social oriented in the sense how you want it to plan stuff. You put it really straight boundaries. This is how we're doing stuff, point. There is no question about it.
there's
In survey speaking, how we apply that on the level of technical management.
okay.
Of course, this is more different approach of free.
I can just tell you, Germany, there's always struggle forces against hunters.
Yeah.
It's completely opposite.
We don't have that.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thank
you.